So like when you mentioned it to me and I was like, oh no, I've become that person that doesn't notice when my dog got fat.
You're like, she's just fluffy. I'm like, meh.
A year and a bit after she was on medication, she weighed 16.2 kgs.
Ooh.
And we were like, holy crap, that
Mm-hmm.
is too much weight. And it wasn't an excessive amount, but it was enough for me to be like, okay, we need to
Mm-hmm.
change something here. So I essentially went home the same day and I pulled out all like the treats she had. And I just I just read what the calorie intake was like on the back of each treat. And then I put it all in a spreadsheet. And then essentially anything that's like on the higher end, we're just not going to give her. And this is not going to be part of her like daily.
And what was the cutoff thing?
Okay, well, let me tell you. I'm Olivia.
I'm Laura, and this is Ruffly Speaking, a podcast driven by honest, curious conversations about life with dogs.
Each episode, we explore one story or idea that helps us see our relationships with dogs a little differently.
It's not about perfect training or quick fixes. It's about the real, sometimes messy, always evolving nature of sharing life with dogs. Yay!
Oh my God, this is our first in-person, we're together.
We're
no
very
screens.
together.
This is crazy. I'm nervous and I don't know why.
I know, and we have so many cameras, guys. You should see our setup, which actually we're gonna share. So
I keep looking at this screen and I know I should be looking at the camera.
So just hang with us while we adjust because, yeah, we wanted to give it a try of doing these solo episodes together. It's like, should I look at you?
I know. Maybe we should look at each other because we're talking to each other.
We're going to find our flow, but we wanted to test out this way because it's, like we live not super close, but not super far away. So like if we can, the solo episodes really have a vibe of us chatting and giving you the vibe of you and us chatting, talking about doggies. I feel like that's gonna be fun. So, but it's our first time, so
I'm so excited. I feel like the flow is gonna be very like natural because we're like in person.
I'm very close.
I know, and then we don't have to be worried about like because the thing virtually is that we're so worried about talking over each other because there's like a half a second lag between when I'm talking and she's talking. And we actually talked about it the other day where you were like, sometimes I just watch your mouth to see when it opens so then I know not to talk. And I
We
was
have
like,
our cues.
oh my God, same. So now we can like watch each other and be like, okay, now this conversation's gonna be flowing much
and
more
it's just
naturally.
the two of us, so it's not like we're gonna be like coming in there.
Yeah.
So, but we'll see how it goes. But we're very excited to give this a try and have an actual set here. Well, I mean, everything will take shape, but I feel like it's also nice because like we've been sharing our process from the very beginning. And I feel like if you go back and see like even the mini episodes that we posted on YouTube, one thing I want to say is like, I feel like my bangs really kind of like measure. You'll see my bangs growing and
they were
coming
like
back.
long, then they were short, then they're long.
And then there's one episode where they're like longer and then the next one is going to be shorter because it's all about like the timing. But anyways, it's going to be fun. So I hope you like this new mode. And Olivia, tell the audience what we are talking about today.
Well, actually, you're the one that brought this topic up because I had shared something on my stories a few months ago about putting my dog Darwin on a diet. And I kind of explained briefly like my process of how I was going to go about doing it and shared a couple things about, reducing her calories and all that. And you were like, hey, we should do that as a podcast episode because you also have experience with your dog Wamba, who also was chunky.
Yeah, she was on the chunky side. Very chunky, actually.
So the fact that we can both like have our own experiences with our own dogs, talking about doggy diets and a little bit of nutrition. We're not experts.
No,
we're not vets. So just as a forewarning, don't take any of this as like practical advice. Go to your vet, consult a professional. But this is just like our experience with our dogs and talking about doggy diet and nutrition and noticing these fluctuations in
weight,
how chunky they are.
Yeah, because like I was so because I think the best way to kind of like just preface this episode is that I had Wamba was a very chunky doggy and she was pretty sure like at some point she was like maybe 4 kilograms above her weight. I'm not sure. Like I was
That's a lot.
she was very chunky. She was very round. But it was just so crazy when we were talking about it, how in the moment, because you are used to the dog and you're always looking at them, it's hard for you to notice when they're getting chunky. So I think like that's the same thing that happened to Olivia. Like last year, we were having a chat and we were like on a WhatsApp group, and I don't know what came, and like we started talking about like chunky dogs, and me and Marina made a comment about like, oh, like Darwin. And then Olivia was in like full on denial because she was just like, is Darwin chunky? And she was like, yes.
I totally forgot about that.
That was the first time. But the fact that you were like, what is my dog chunky? I was like, oh my God. Like,
you know what? The thing is that's funny is that before I got Darwin, like me and Ricky had a friend who had a dog. And like when we first saw the dog, she was like very slim, very like puppy-like. And then a few months later afterwards, we're like, holy smokes, this dog gained so much weight. How did they not notice it? And it's always been like a running joke between me and Ricky about how much weight this dog has gained. So like when you mentioned it to me and I was like, oh no, I've become that person that doesn't notice when my dog got fat.
You're like, she's just fluffy. I'm like,
and like I think it was like always in the back of my mind, but it never, like, you don't confront it until somebody tells it to you. And like I'm not offended at all. I'm just like, oh no, I've become the thing that I said I wouldn't become. But you just, it's so hard to notice unless somebody calls it out or something. So
and I think even that, like you cannot like say like, oh no, like my dog is chunky, because it was until you went to the vet that you were like, I remember you posted this story of like, guys, I went to the vet and turns out that like Darwin is overweight. And I was like, no way.
Because like you're like, yeah, my dog's chunky. It's like she's a bit rounder. It's fine, whatever. And then you're kind of like, you know, it's a fact or it's true, but you don't really accept that it's a problem. Does that make sense?
Until the vet says that.
Yeah, and then you're like, oh, okay, this is a real problem. We need to work on this.
Yeah, so that's why we figured this was the perfect episode to just talk about it, because we see that a lot, and there's a lot of chunky doggies out there, and I think like it's a mix of, I don't know, I think like, you know, like sometimes they do look a bit like adorable and it's just like, oh, look at him. But at the same time, it does come with a lot of health issues. And, you know, like in the same way that we want to be very mindful with them in terms of training and how we, you know, like just try to build a really good relationship for like a long-term situation with our dogs, we also need to take into consideration that weight is like, it dictates a lot of like the health issues that our dogs may have in the future. So I think it's an important thing. I think like now, as someone who used to be that person, because I think like I was in the same position with Wamba, like in the beginning, I was just like, oh, she's a little chunky, a little round. And in Mexico, I mean, guys, in Mexico, it's a big issue. So like we really normalize that a lot, I think, and especially when I was younger. I think now there's a lot of campaigns to like bring awareness to that and be more mindful about it. But Mexican food is very tasty, and that creates a lot of like, once now that we went back on vacation, like we were like eating like, oh, like so much food every single meal, and we would eat without being hungry just because it's like it's something tasty in here.
Yeah.
So we were like, if we were still living in here, I think I would be a lot more chunky myself. So I think like culturally, it's also like very like in some places you normalize that more than others.
Yes.
So at least in Mexico, like it was so normalized for me. So it was just like, oh, you know, like, yeah, we're all a little bit chunky. But then, yeah, like the health issues starting to present. And I think it was until she was, I think like 10 years old that we actually put her on a diet.
That's quite old for
It
a
was
dog
very
to be
old.
on a diet.
I know, but it was
I mean, there's
until
never
then.
it's never too late to put your dog on a diet, but like at that point, she's like a senior dog, you know, and you really have to watch out for this stuff as they get older too, because it's harder on their joints and they have arthritis and all that stuff. But that makes a lot of sense. And I think also because when you see a chunky dog, you're more likely to be like, that's so cute, he's so chunky. Whereas if you saw like a chunkier human,
Yeah.
you don't have that same reaction. So I think with our pets, we're more likely to indulge them and let them get a bit on the heavier side, because it could be like an endearing quality in what we see in our dogs. So I totally get why because I went through it. I totally get why people just don't see it until it like smacks them in the face.
And it's also that once you realize, at least that was a shock for me. And I want to hear your whole story about like your process with Darwin. But yeah, like once you start, and guys, like this is the reason why I wanted to make this episode, because this lady right here, like once she knew about, like she accepted the reality that her dog was chunky, she took it serious. Like she has spreadsheets. She has, like, we'll see her snackies container. And I feel like you just really took like a very like hands-on approach of like, okay, this has to change. I need to understand this. And like the charts about the calories and all of that. I think it's only when you start thinking about those things that you realize how many calories are in a bully stick.
Oh my God.
And how many calories are in all these treats that we're just like, woo! And I also find that for us, like kind of like our training has a lot to do with food.
Yes.
There is a tendency in more of like positive reinforcement type of doggies to be a bit more overweight. And that's something I've recently been like introducing, like the way that I train with people, trying to make the daily food intake part of like the training and working with the relationship with the dog with their own food, to try to use that a lot, because I am very aware of like, I don't want to overfeed dogs because we're training. And I think it's so easy to forget that part when we're like, woo! So yeah, we're going to talk about all of that. But first, let's hear about Darwin's story.
Yes, we will talk about all of that and more. Okay, so for Darwin, I'm just going to give a lot of context first. You can understand what kind of like dog she is and how this all came about. But so she's a miniature American Shepherd. It's also called a miniature Australian Shepherd. They're the same thing. The technical name is just miniature American Shepherd. The average weight for her breed is about I looked all of this up. It's about 9 to 18 kilograms. I don't know what that is in pounds because I didn't convert it.
And it's so funny that you use kilograms. At least Fernando was like,
that's what they do at the vet office. So I just like defaulted to being like, okay, we'll just use kilos, but I'll just do a really quick conversion for you. So 9 kilograms is 19 pounds.
Okay.
And 18 is 39 pounds.
So it's almost double.
So that's the average. And it's like a huge window, right? Because dogs, like miniature American Shepherds, can be really small or can be really big. And it also depends on like the sex of the dog. So boys tend to be larger than girls. And so Darwin, she's a female. And it also depends on their height, and it's a whole thing. Anyway, so it's a big wide range. So it's hard to even just tell by that number whether your dog is like underweight or overweight, because it's so varied. So that's the average for her. Also, to put into consideration for Darwin, she went on behavioral medication at around 2 years old, I think it was. Let me just double check.
We have data.
I went back and like went all through her like medical records and everything just to make sure I'm not getting anything wrong. So she went on meds on June of 2024, and she was born in 2021. So of September.
Almost 3 years.
I can't do math, so thank you.
Almost 3 years, guys.
Okay, so at that age, she's also like pretty filled out in her body. Like she's not growing a lot anymore. That's kind of like her adult body. So
we have the information of how much she weighed
before
that.
So I went back further into the medical records. So in April of 2024, so before she was on medication, she was 13.3 kgs, which is 29.3 pounds. So for me, that was like a good weight for her. Like she was a bit slimmer. She wasn't too chunky. That was an ideal weight for her. And then as soon as she went on medication, okay, wait, hold on. Let's back up for a second. April 2024, she was 13.3 kilos. June of 2024, she was 14.6. Don't know what happened there.
1 kilo.
She gained a bit of weight. This was before the medication.
Okay.
And then 6 months after she was on meds, she lost some weight. So I don't know if it was just us being like, okay, the doctor told us if she was on medication, she could lose some weight. So let's try to like dial it back a little bit. But I think we were also trying to figure out the sweet spot in like understanding how her medication was playing into her behavior and how much training we had to do in order to make it all work together. Because medication is not like a fix all type of cure. Like you have to have a training plan if you're going to put your dog on behavioral medication. So I guess we were just figuring all of that out. And then, what do I have here?
December, the time of the truth.
Okay. So this is about a year and a bit after she was on medication. She weighed 16.2 kgs, which doesn't seem like a lot. Like it's about 2 kilograms, but she's a small dog. So that adds up a lot. And we were like, holy crap, that is too much weight. And it wasn't an excessive amount where she was like morbidly obese or whatever, but it was enough for me to be like, okay, we need to change something here, because if she just is consistently on what she's doing right now, like on her diet and everything, she will gain more weight, especially as she gets older. So that was kind of the moment of, okay, we need to change some stuff. But like you said, we were also doing a lot of heavy reinforcement like training. And I think in the back of my mind, that was also the reason why I kind of let it slide when I saw her weight creep up a little bit over the last like year and a bit. Cause I was like, well, we also have to do a lot of training. She's super reactive. Like, what else are we supposed to do? Like, it's okay. We'll just put the weight issue as kind of like future us problem as we deal with the reactivity and like getting her anxiety down, because I would rather focus on that than have to worry about the weight and that at the same time.
You have to choose your battles.
Exactly. So I was like, we'll worry about that later. Came up faster than expected. So yeah, so that's when we were like, yeah, that we have to think something about this. And so that was, in just December. So like 2 months ago is when she weighed 16.2 kilos or 35.5 pounds. Yes. And then we had to put her on a plan to lose weight. Do you want me to get into all that now?
I mean, I would like to know, like, kind of like your process of, okay, because like I feel like that is the part, because after a lot of, because I feel like the denial part is a huge part, and that was at least in my experience, because as you saw, like I put her on a diet like pretty older, and it was because I changed vets, and even though like our previous vet, it was just like, oh yeah, like she's a little bit overweight and la 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 la. And also when we, I think like she also gained a lot when we finally spayed her. Did we spay her? So I think she was like older also too when she got spayed.
Interesting.
I know, like it was, I have like, it's a blur for me. But she was older when like I came up with the idea, because we met another doggy that it was identical to her, and we're like, they have babies.
Yes.
And of course she was older and she was like, fuck nah. Not like she was not letting the dog near her. So like we had those attempts, which thankfully it wasn't successful at that point. But then we spayed her, and of course she kind of like gained even more weight. So that's when we switched vets to my husband's dad, who is a vet, and he is very big about keeping dogs lean and not having obese dogs. And like something I was sharing with Olivia is that he's very cold. Like he's very data based, and like he likes his facts, and he's very direct. So when he comes and visits here in Canada, like when we are walking around and people are walking their dogs, he is just like upset because he's just like, why are all the dogs obese? And like we have to like give him chill, because like sometimes we're standing next to a dog and he's just like looking at them, and it's just like, look at that obese dog. And it's just like the way he says that, it's just like don't say it like that. It's like so tough. But I also appreciate the fact that he's like, this is not okay. This is gonna bring issues in the problem. And he always ties that into like these dogs are way too sedentary, like their lifestyle and all of that. So I think like that is something that it's easy to forget, because like dogs really are made to like move and to have a lot of activity and to really use their bodies. And that's how I think about it now, that the more we can keep them in their ideal weight, like it's like longer and like better life that we are offering them, and I could see that because my dog started like limping like randomly, and she always had that little limp, and it would come and go, so we never knew. Like we felt like maybe it was something in her joints, but it definitely got a lot better when she lost weight. So it's something like you actually like go back and like give her a try with a new weight that you see all of these things that were linked to that. That in like back then I didn't even think of that, of like, oh, like yeah, like she's chunky and at the same time she has these limbs and sometimes she struggles getting up her bed or things like that. But it was just like, oh, it's her joints. And it took us a while to connect the dots of like, huh,
Yeah.
like probably this is linked to that. And in our case, it was also very easy to feed her a lot of like random things. Like she loved bananas. So it was kind of like she again, she was a Cocker Spaniel. So she loved her food. She was very food motivated and she loved bananas. And then we would eat her like a banana, like sometimes like per day. And it was like, okay, maybe half a banana. But then there was this like grocery store. Like it was very tiny local grocery store in our street. And then we would just like walk there. And as I said, like she was often off leash. So she would like come out when we were going there and she would just run into the grocery store and people would know her. And actually they knew us as like, oh, my mom was like Wamba's mom and like, well, grandma. And then I was just kind of like the friends in there. But we would come like after the moment we arrived into the store, they were like, yeah, we gave her 5 bananas. And it was just like all the old bananas, they would just save it for her. And then they were like, yeah, she ate 5. And it was just like, stop giving her. And then she was like, but she always asks for more. And like, she will never stop asking for more food. So I think it's also a part that it's hard, I think, for humans to resist the temptation of giving dogs treats, or you know, like sometimes I see her bowl and it's just like, this is such plain and boring food. I want to give you something exciting. But yeah, that's how my dog ended up being like very, very overweight.
Do you remember if you put her on a specific diet plan, or were you just like, let's just cut back on all the things that she doesn't need?
Well, we tried just cutting back her food, but it wasn't working that well. So then the only way we managed to get her to her ideal weight is that we changed kibble. Okay. And we actually changed to a brand that it was Canadian, because back then we were already starting to come to Canada. So it's like, look at that, it's something Canadian. And it was a kibble meant for like weight loss.
Okay.
And I think it was both seniors and weight loss. So that was, I wish I knew the brands, but it was that. So then we finally had like the measurement. And that's where I'm telling you, like when I saw the measurement for like the food that I was supposed to give her, and then I put it in a bowl, it was just like,
I know.
It's gone. And I was telling Olivia, like I didn't know back then of the existence of like slow feeders or like anything to help her I ingest her food slower, because she would just like inhale it. So for me, it was just like, oh my God, like she's just gonna take a second and then she's gonna take all of that. And then that's it. That's her food till night. So it was just like, it was hard for me. And I thought that I was starving her. But then when I saw her in her ideal weight, it was very worth it. So, yeah. But it's hard.
I think it's also that idea of like humans, we take so much enjoyment in eating food, like the process of eating food, and we want our dogs to feel that same enjoyment. And they do enjoy eating food because they're so food motivated, but they don't, it's not the same way we do. Like a lot of dogs will just inhale food and not even chew it, and they just want to take it all in rather than like savoring it and like tasting all the flavors. And I know dogs don't have as many taste buds as humans do. So like it doesn't even, it's not the same like experience as us, but their noses are way better than ours. And I do think, because Ricky and I were talking about this the other day, I was like, well, they don't have as many taste buds. And he's like, well, their noses are amazing. So maybe that also adds to the experience of like eating. But I totally get what you mean. Like you feel bad for the dog because they're like, well, you ate that in 5 seconds. You didn't even enjoy it. So maybe I should give you another snack or something more delicious. But so like you cut back on her food and then also changed her food and no
bananas went away. No more banana. So yeah, like I think like we just gave her like half a banana, just like kind of like per week or something. When before it was just like extreme, and then we cut down the food, and also like also like when you're cooking, and then it's just like, oh, this little part of the meat, and you like throw it in there, and then she was like, ah. So I think like those like in like my times with Wamba, like you didn't have like so many chews or anything like that. So that wasn't part of like right now I know that everyone is like, oh yeah, just give him a bully stick or things like that. Yes. Like back then I didn't know those existed. So like she didn't get any of those. We would like sometimes like get like bones for her to kind of like chew on. But she would just kind of like eat like the outside. She wouldn't like eat the whole thing. But I think it was mainly like that. The food intake that we were giving her like was way more than she needed. And also like we were giving her also pretty cheap cable. So when we changed, it was so much more expensive. Yeah. But at the same time, it was like less, like grains and everything that is just fluff in the meat, and it was more like the protein, and it was, you can see the difference in the kibble that it was just very packed. So yeah, that was the way, and I think it took us around like 6 months. It was pretty quick. Like once we actually got into it, she lost weight quite fast.
Yeah, that's so interesting, especially about like the protein, because like as I was doing my spreadsheet, which I'll talk about, I realized that the ones that were higher calorie were the ones that were like single ingredient proteins. And so those are the ones I actually had to cut out of Darwin's diet. Whereas like the ones with like the fillers and like mixed with the, I don't know, like oats or whatever, were actually the lesser calorie treats. So I think that's like one of the highest calorie treats that I had for Darwin in my repertoire and cupboard of treats was turkey, like freeze-dried turkey. Like it is so calorie dense. It's insane. And like you don't realize this stuff until you map it all out, measure it all out, and you're like, holy shit, I was way overfeeding my dog. And just like what you said, the little scraps here and there, like have a little piece of cheese or have a little whatever. Like it adds up so fast. But yeah, so for Darwin, okay, we went for the vet check in December. The vet said she gained a little bit of weight and we should probably cut back on some things. She didn't really, this wasn't Darwin's regular vet that we saw, so she wasn't going to get really into like putting her on a specific diet plan. And also it wasn't a huge concern because again, she wasn't morbidly obese. But she was just like, you just need to cut back on some stuff. So we were like, okay, great. So essentially I went home and I get into these modes where I'm like, I need to figure this out right now. I cannot wait for this.
That's the short hair German Shepherd. Like, yeah, pointer in you.
Yeah, that's the pointer in me. I was like, we just got to figure this out, get it all out so I don't have to like think about it and worry about it. So I essentially went home the same day and I pulled out all like the treats she had. And I just read what the calorie intake was like on the back of each treat. And then I put it all in a spreadsheet.
You have to like we have to see the spreadsheet.
I mean, we can put a screenshot in the video, but
yeah, we'll put it in there so we
it's
can
also a very messy. Like when I do spreadsheets, they're not like,
that doesn't look messy to me, Olivia.
I know, but if you met somebody who actually did like, I don't even know if you can see that.
I think like we can just put it on top of it.
There.
We'll take a screenshot of that.
I think if you met somebody who actually does spreadsheets for a living, like an accountant, they'd be like, what the heck is this? Like there's numbers everywhere and it doesn't make sense, but it makes sense to me. But I essentially put all of her different treats on a spreadsheet, and then I listed how many kcals per kilogram were in each treat. And then I also did the math to convert it to kcals per gram, because different measurements. But then for some, I also had to do kcals per cup because all treats, they don't list kcals the same way. So that's like a kilocalorie. What does that even mean?
I think it's kilocalorie.
Kilocalorie? Kcal? We're just Googling it. Yeah, kilocalorie. So a unit of energy equal to 1,000 small calories. So not all treats list them the same on the back of the packages. So if you go to your cupboard and you look at the treats and how they list kcals, it'll be likely different. So I just had to make sure that they were all consistent so I can see the, what is it called? like that they were just the same throughout all the treats. And then essentially I told myself, okay, anything that's like on the higher end, we're just not going to give her. So I put everything on the higher end at the bottom and was like, okay, we're just going to separate this. And this is not going to be part of her like daily.
And what was the cutoff thing?
Okay, well, let me tell you. So there's this brand called Itty, I think it's called ITI, and they do a lot of like freeze dried. What is it called? What is it called when the protein, novel proteins? So they do like venison, they do like lamb jerky, that sort of stuff. I think based in New Zealand. But like the kcal per kilogram was like 4,000 and above, which is high. So I was like, okay, we can't give her that stuff anymore. That's way too high, and we just got to set it aside.
So it was all air dried, like treats.
Yes, air dried lamb, air dried venison, air dried jerky tendon chicken, and then there was also a NutriBrite freeze dried chicken, which you'd be like, chicken doesn't seem like a really high calorie thing, but apparently when it's like single protein and freeze dried or air dried, it tends to be quite high. Air dried venison. What is this? Great Jack's freeze dried food topper turkey.
Is that the one that you kind of like dust?
I don't even know what that is. I probably just took it and I was like, we're not using that.
Oh my God, 6,000.
And the bully stick was also very high. And I wasn't giving her a full bully stick every day, but I was letting her chew a bully stick for about 15 minutes every single day. And so I just love giving her a bully stick because I'm like, it's enrichment. She's chewing. And also it gives me 15 minutes to do whatever the hell I want without her bugging me.
And I think it's funny because when I consider like chewing like things, in my head, it stays in the chewing, you know, like it's like, like I don't count the fact that after the chewing, they ingest the thing.
Oh, they're ingesting.
Yeah. So like in my brain, it just disappears in the ether, and it's like, nope, they eat it.
It's very high calorie. So a bully stick, it's 3,300 kcals per kilogram. So it's on the higher end. So it's not insanely high, but it's on the higher end. So my moderation for that was like, okay, instead of giving it to her every single day, I'm going to give it to her every second day. So at least that cuts it in half, which is quite a lot. And that was like my one little treat that I was going to keep for her. I'm not going to take that out because I know she loves it. She gets so excited when the bully stick comes out, and I like it because it's like an iPad for a child.
It's funny because if you saw Darwin, like she's just constantly thinking about food. And like when we are in her home, she just goes into like, she has the buttons and then she goes into the food button and she's like, click. Food. And I remember when we were like the first time we went to your home, every time Darwin would go into her place, Olivia was like, oh, a sweet potato.
That's another thing is like when she was younger, I was giving her like a sweet potato chew, which are like that big, like almost every day. And now I cut them up into like 8 pieces and she gets one little piece daily now. So
I'm sure she has complaints.
You know what is funny though? Ricky and I talk about this all the time, is that even though we've reduced the amount she's eating by a lot, she doesn't feel like she's getting any less because every time she asks, she still gets something.
But it's just smaller.
It's just smaller.
Like shrinkflation.
So like in her head, she's still getting something. It just happens to not last as long. Or it's
like,
smaller
so
quantity.
weird.
Yeah. But yeah, so essentially I put this all on a spreadsheet. I told myself we're only going to give her the stuff that's lesser calories. And then I basically did the math to see what her daily intake of what all these treats could look like, along with her daily food intake, which she's eating Purina Pro Plan lamb and oatmeal. And even that's kind of high calorie too. So, so I had to calculate her daily kibble intake first and then see what I had left over to be able to fill it up with like treats that we could use. Because we still need a lot of high value treats when we're outside because of her reactivity and all her training and everything. And I did also reduce her daily kibble intake. So she was eating, which just sounds crazy because anybody with a big dog would be like, that's nothing. But she's a small girl and she ate a cup of food per day. So now she's only eating 3/4 cup per day. So we just reduced it by like a quarter.
Okay. It wasn't a huge.
No. And that's the thing is that like, I think when people are trying to get their dog to lose weight, they feel like they have to make really drastic changes. Whereas I feel like if you just put in the work to like map everything out, you just have to reduce things here and there, and then you have a more balanced approach to it rather than like cutting things in half and like just removing things entirely, because that could also be really hard for the dog and them not understand like, why am I being starved now.
And I think like just simply like doing this exercise of like pulling all of these like calories and things and like just bringing the awareness into, okay, like what am I giving? Because I think back of like again, like we didn't have like this whole variety of treats, but bananas are pretty much sugar. Like, so she was just getting a lot of sugar in those treats, especially with the bananas that the grocery store would give her, because they were like the like black bananas who are like higher in sugar. So I think like just bringing that awareness of saying like, damn, like the bully sticks, like this thing is like just being aware that every time you're giving her that, you're adding like X number of calories, and just knowing that and like making those decisions of like, okay, just taking it every other day can reduce like by half everything that she's taking. So I think like those little things, like just bringing, just being aware of what you're doing, because sometimes we're just doing things of like, yeah, this and that, and we don't even think about it. And I think a lot of like your little bowl, like every time that we go visit and you give us the bowl, but it has kibble, but it also has like different treats. And sometimes you see the mix and it's just like, oh, like, like you don't even think about it. But like now it's like, oh, okay, you know, like you can do this more. And like a huge part, because like I want to see your container, because like that's a big part of like something that I always talk to my clients is that I see so often, like when people give dogs treats, it's just like massive. And they think that when it comes to training, it's just like, oh, you have to give them treats. And then they think about like the size of treats that they're giving. And it's just like, but that's going to be so much food. And then I show them my treats and it's just like, whoa, like those are so tiny. But I think like what they don't like, I don't know, like a lot of, it was me with my dog. Like I really wanted the amount, but really for dogs, even when you're doing training and you have like a tiny piece, I saw that you cut once in there, like so tiny. Because like that is a rep, you know, like the dog receives something, and as you said, like because they just swallow, they just
want the taste,
and they feel something, and it's just like, okay, yeah, I'll take it, and that was it, and then I'll try again next time. So I think it's just also making us aware of that we really don't have to give them like this thing that they have to chew. Like you really have to keep it like very, very small, and even using their kibble, and then you have people like chopping the kibble into pieces and things like that do really have a lot of reps. But yeah, like mind your treats, guys. You don't have to give them massive pieces. You just need to give them something to just create that loop of like, I did this and then I got this and then I have another rep. So keep your treats small, guys.
That's such a good point. And before I pull out the snackle box, because I know you want to see the snackle box, what you were saying about like, it's just a good, like doing all this is such a good exercise for you to understand like how much you're actually feeding your dog. Cause like that idea of like, oh, you're just going to give Wamba a banana every day. And like for us, it was cheese with Darwin, and cheese is so fatty.
It's just fat.
It's just fat. And Ricky and I eat so much cheese. And every time we ate it like cheese, we would just be like, we'll just give her a little bit. And we weren't giving her like massive amounts. We were just like giving her a little bit every single time. But a little bit every single time adds up so fast with cheese. So we had to cut that out completely, like just stop doing that as a habit. And even that was so difficult for us because we were like, but she's not getting any cheese from us.
And then she's so conditioned to the sign of the cheese wrapper now. Yes. It's also another thing like they learn.
So like another way for me to reframe that in my head was like, okay, if I want to give her cheese, I can, but I have to do it with some sort of like really intense training. And by intense, I mean like something that's going to be difficult for her. And so for me, I was like, we're going to do it with the muzzle. So anytime I give her cheese, it has to be done with muzzle conditioning, because I'm training her to use a muzzle right now, which she pretty much is good for, but I still want to make it a positive association with her. So even now when I'm like, okay, if I want to give her a little bit of cheese, she has to put the muzzle on, and it's got to be a fun thing for us. So it's not just like, here. And
I think like that's another thing that you really start appreciating. And I was just talking to a client about this, because I always try to move dogs, because I notice a lot for dogs who are grazers, who just have the food there. like the relationship with their food, and especially with their own food, is just kind of like, meh.
Yeah.
And then, like I see a lot of people who go into that, and then they constantly have to be raising the bar for like higher value treats. And then they got tired of that. So then you need a bigger one. And then you basically train your dog to like really crave for that novelty, this new thing. So you keep going higher and higher. And normally higher value involves higher calories, because you're thinking about like protein and cheesy and like all these things. So like then you start kind of like ramping up, and it's like, it's just so good to kind of like just analyze, okay, what is the relationship with my dog with food, and how can I start maybe like changing habits in a way that we can make her daily food like a good training tool. And then we leave those higher value for higher value situations when you really want like a very noticeable jackpot, or you want something like truly hard that is just like the muscle training or like condition, and you really save that. So I think it's also preserving the value in higher value stuff by kind of like just not falling into the trap of like more.
Yeah, that's such a good point. I know, because like I guess when we both deal with clients and they say, oh, my dog's not really food motivated, our first question is usually like, well, what's your dog's relationship with food like? Like, like, are they eating food all the time? Is it just left out? Do you take it away? Are you leaving high value stuff out? Like, is the chews always out? So I think that's like such a good point about how like they see their relationship with food to begin with, and how you need to kind of shift that. So yeah, that's okay. Do you want to bring out the snackle box?
Bring the snackle box.
Ta-da! I'm not going to tip it too much because it's going to spill out. But so essentially, I took my spreadsheet and I picked out the top 8 lowest calorie treats that I could find that Darwin would also find high value enough for her, because again, your dog determines what is high value, not you. And put it into this box, which we could pick from weekly. So instead of doing like a daily, which is what I initially started out with, like I did like a little daily container and be like, okay, this is what we can eat for today, which my husband didn't love, because he's like, I want variety in my things, that I don't want to be limited to like a daily box. So I was like, okay, if you want variety, then maybe let's do like a weekly box. And this is her weekly intake. So by the end of the week, if she's finished it all, then she gets no more. But if there's leftover, then that's great, because then we're like keeping on track. So I essentially put out all the treats, and each treat has its own little container. And I also did it in a way where it was like lowest calorie to highest calorie.
Okay, so what do we have here? So we have salmon.
Okay, yeah, so that's salmon, and it's not like single ingredient salmon. It's like also mixed with filler and stuff. So that tends to be like the lowest calorie. So we got salmon, and then this is liver, same thing, not single ingredient. We've got chicken jerky, same thing, not single ingredient. This is a different type of kibble than her regular kibble. So it's like, it adds variety. It's different for her. She still loves it. We have the sweet potatoes, which you can see I've cut up into, like, this is one sweet potato chew, and I've cut it up into like 7 pieces. This is wrong.
It's not apple and cheese.
It's not apple and cheese. That is actually the air dried or freeze dried lamb pieces. And you can see there's very little of that. So I don't give her a lot of that one because it's pretty high calorie. I think that should be at the end here, actually. This is freeze dried liver, which is the one you can get at like Costco. Like, and also I think that's the thing that people think, is that like the ones that they sell in the bags, they think that's just like a predetermined size. So they're like,
give it the whole thing.
Exactly. Give them the whole thing. But like those Costco liver,
they're big.
They're like this. And I've seen people just give their dog the whole damn thing. And I'm like, that was like 10 pieces of treats you could have eaten.
A whole training session right there.
Literally. So I spend my time like every 3 weeks or whatever, and I just sit there and I cut up like the liver bits or whatever pieces I need to like cut up. So these are pretty tiny. And then this one is like a weird mixture of like pork, beef, blueberry sort of thing. But just so you can see how small.
Oh, I want you to see the chicken.
Some of these are cut up. Go ahead, feel free. It's like show and tell.
I feel like let me see, because I would love to like put it, like I'm gonna try to put it closer to maybe this one. So let me see. Do you see it in there? Okay, so this is the thing. So if you see, so this is the chicken that she cut into pieces. I hope that you can really see that. I don't know. Do you see it?
Yeah, you can see it.
Okay, so this is
for our Spotify, Apple Podcast listeners. Hold it between your fingers, like one little piece. Okay.
Okay, let me
Lower.
see. Here,
There.
here we
There it
go.
is. Okay.
So
It's
it's
like
so
it's
tiny.
tiny. It's like half the size of your nail, probably.
Super
Maybe
tiny.
smaller.
Yeah. Like let's compare with my nail.
And I cut this up from like a chicken jerky strip, which is like
Mm-hmm.
probably the length of like your index finger.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I cut them up, and that's just one piece of chicken jerky, which I cut
Mm-hmm.
up into like a gazillion
And
pieces.
then she has these ones who are bigger, but you can also break it into
Yes.
pieces.
So anything that's actually bigger in there, I actually break on the go. So
Because they're soft.
yes, I don't actually give her the whole piece because that's massive.
And then you have like for example, the beef liver here, who is just like,
And what I like about this method is that she has a variety of like texture and
mm-hmm.
like the taste of different things. Like there are different
So like
proteins.
that's the kibble.
Some of them are more crumbly. So if I wanted to put some like in a snuffle mat or lick mat for her, I could just crumble up some pieces because she loves just licking up like
Mm-hmm.
crumbs.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the snackle
Fill
box.
them
It
up.
has worked really well for us.
I got chili.
I've been chilly this whole time. That's why I need a jacket.
Okay, guys, we're back.
So yeah, that's a snackle box. It's worked really well for us. And yeah, so we measure her. We also measure her food daily. So we just measure it out and put it in a container. And we say, this is as much as she gets for today. And that's as much as she gets for the week. And we kind of just do it that way so that, she stays on her diet plan.
Yeah, and I think like we really wanted to make this episode because again, like there are so many of dogs. Like a lot of our clients, a lot of dogs we see outside, our friends' dogs. There is definitely a tendency of like a lot of dogs who are on the chunkier side. And I don't like it's hard to see really dogs who are lean and who are kind of like in the ideal weight.
Mm-hmm.
So we also kind of like want to share, like we probably can put it in there because I feel like just like you mentioned, like if you go by numbers of like what is the ideal weight for your dog, like you cannot go by the breed standard because it's so wide that you have like bigger dogs. Like even from a same litter, you can have, like a smaller dog and then you have like a full size, like I don't know, like it was supposed to be miniature and this one came out like normal size. So I think it really is, I find like the most useful one is kind of like that upper view of
It's
their
called the body conditioning score, BCS.
yeah.
Look
So yeah, and we'll put it in there, like the pictures. So like really seeing, and I feel like once you start seeing kind of like that waist going away and being a little bit of a rectangle. Those are the moments where you really need to start thinking about, like, okay, so like, how can we start? Like, there is definitely a situation. There's those who is like for medical issues, like they just start gaining a lot of weight. And I think like on the other side, like this is just the food intake and calorie intake side. But I think like just like my father-in-law says a lot, is the lifestyle. Like I
Yes.
think like the fact that a lot of people consider exercise a walk around the neighborhood at human speed. It's like it's not. Like again, like for me, it was a big like mindset shift when it's like you really understand that the body of a dog is meant to move, to run, to like go through like their full speed and like really do complicated things. So I feel like that is the part that someone who just like takes a dog out for a walk and does like, I don't know, like a 30-minute walk around the neighborhood, like how is that really like exercise? So I feel like just also improving like what is the daily life of this dog and giving them more opportunities to move. And I think like really that's how you start seeing the connection between like the weight and the lifestyle and the behavior situations that you may having, because sometimes the behaviors that you're having, and then on top of that, you see your dog is overweight. So like that gives you a lot of things and a lot of room for you to start making changes because, like simply adding more exercise and more movement, that's going to help their nervous system. That's going to help their weight situation. So I feel like it's just important for us to understand of like, okay, my dog was meant to move, to do a lot of exercise. What is the lifestyle right now? And how can I help them kind of like get to a more, I don't know, like enriched life in that sense of like the physical exercise and the movement and the running. And then that is also going to help whatever training situation you're dealing with or behavior problems, because normally those behavior problems also stem from the fact that this dog is lacking certain needs of like either movement, exercise, and just doing the thing that they're supposed to do. So I feel like it's good. It's like everything is linked together, and it's not like you can just cut and it's just like you have a chunky dog and that's a problem all in itself. It's like, no, like that really is just like a signal that something may need tweaking to improve the quality of life of your dog, which I feel like we all want that.
I'm so glad we co-host this podcast together because like I have so many ideas in my head and then I say them out loud and then you say something and I'm like, thank God she's here because I would have forgotten to talk about that completely if you weren't here. But that's such a good point about like physical activity and whether or not they're getting enrichment, because if you want your dog to lose weight or if you want to be more mindful of their weight, first you should tackle just diet and then you should tackle activity and exercise and then just look at it holistically. Like what can we shift in their routine, in their lifestyle that can help them just live a healthier life? And for us, like, again, we didn't have a professional helping us or a nutritionist or whatever, but for us, we were like, okay, Darwin is getting as much exercise as we can possibly give her right now. She goes out for daily walks, and that's not like a neighborhood walk. It can be, but most of the time it involves a neighborhood walk as well as some playing on the field, or we go up to the mountain to do a hike, or we go to a trail and do that, or she has a lot of sniffing involved. She does a lot of structured fetch, and this is pretty much daily for her. And we also do a lot of indoor play, which she loves. So we knew that that wasn't going to change that much. And even just having her reduce her daily intake of calories, switching up to the snackle box situation and being more mindful of like little scraps of human food that we were giving her. So in the last month,
I wanted to see this.
So reminder, in December of last year, which was only 2 months ago, she was 16.2 kilograms, 35.5 pounds. I weighed her in January, exactly a month later. She went down to 15.6 kilograms, 34.4 pounds. So basically she lost a pound of weight, which is kind of incredible for a dog who is not that large. So I was actually pretty happy with like how it was going for her and being able to lose that amount of weight in just a month of time. And then I also weighed her again recently, which was her 2-month mark. And she went down from 15.6 in January to 15.3 in February. So there was a slowing down of how much weight she was losing, but I was kind of expecting that because that first month would be like the most she would lose because of that dramatic shift. And then having it taper out a little bit more evenly. So I'm excited to see what the next month will look like to see if she's going to continue losing just a little bit of weight or if it's going to start plateauing out and seeing what we need to do to shift. But ideally, I would like her to be at 13.5.
Going back to her ideal.
So before she was like on medication and when she was like, 3 years old or whatever. So that nice leaner body, which I think will just be better for her overall, her health, and better on her joints as she gets older, because she is 4 now. So ideally, that's what I would like her to be on.
So she's just like 2 kilograms.
Yes, just about 2 kilos.
Okay.
Yeah, almost.
So we'll have to do another episode, like maybe in like 4 months, so we can really track how everything is going. And I'm also curious because, I mean, I'm just kind of like tossing it out there because you were saying how like recently you've also been noticing a shift in her behavior and like all of those, like just simply how she takes in the world. And, like there's so many things to consider when it comes to, like, okay, like she's maturing, like you've been doing a lot of training, all of that starts kicking up. But it's just like, I just found it funny because you do have this variable that is just like you being forced. And I think like that was one part that I mentioned to you when you were like, damn, like I really have to talk about the intake and the, like the training side. And I was saying that, I feel like that also offers an opportunity because it's very easy to train with food. So that's why a lot of trainers use food as the reward of choice because, if you have a food motivated dog and, like you can do a lot of progress with that. But at the same time, I feel like once you are limited on like, okay, let's not rely on food as much. There's so many other reinforcements that we can use for our dogs that doesn't have to be necessarily food. So, like I was telling Olivia that one day I forgot like my treats. Like it was so crazy because I took like I was going on my walks with my dogs and then I checked and I didn't have treats. And I was just like, what am I gonna do? And then it was just like, well, honestly, that was, I think, one of my favorite days because it got me thinking. And I think like that is another thing, like with all of this awareness, we also have to consider that us humans, we are creatures of habits. And once we find a thing that works, we're just going to keep using that and we're going to rely on that. And I think sometimes we do need these wake up calls when it's like either you forgot your treats or you have to like reduce your food intake. And it forces you to be more creative and forces you to try all these other things and get better at training with different reinforcements, which I felt that that was going to be the exciting part for you. Like that now you have to you have to use that for the whole week. Mm-hmm. So if you're running low, you have to kind of like get creative into like, how can we incorporate more play? And turns out play also comes with exercise. So then the dog is having that extra exercise because now you are doing more things in there. So I feel like it's also nice to take it as something that forces you to do something different and find and get more used to using different reinforcements for your training. And I think like that is always a nice thing to do.
I mean, for us, we always use play for Darwin as a great reinforcer for her.
I mean, Darwin is always asking for play.
She her life revolves around food and toys. Food, toys, and sleep. So we do a lot of like reinforcement through like play and toys when we're like out on a field and stuff. I don't do it necessarily when I'm walking with her because she's pretty focused on like sniffing and like doing other things. But one thing I didn't expect to happen, and I don't know if this is like a direct result from just the diet that we put her on, or it's just a culmination of everything coming together. And I did make a post on my Instagram about this recently, about how in the last couple months, I felt a real shift in Darwin's behavior and her temperament and how she's reacting to the world. And she's just been like so much calmer inside and outside, less anxious, so less whining inside the house. And her reactivity has significantly decreased in the sense where like, if we're just out on a street and then like someone comes out of their car or out of their house, she usually will get pretty tense and start reacting quickly soon after. But usually she'll just look at them and be completely relaxed in her body, like maybe a tail lift a little bit, but her body's pretty relaxed. And then she'll just look at me. And I'm like, who is this dog? And like, it seems like such a small little change, but for us,
if you knew Darwin,
it's just the wildest thing. And I'm like, it's been happening consistently over the past like month or so. And Ricky actually made a good point because my husband's a flight attendant, so he goes away for like 3 days at a time. And before these 2 months, he would be like, I think I noticed a change because before all of this, you would be like, when I came back, you'd be like, oh, Darwin has just been so on your nerves and like, you're so tired of her and you just need a break from her. And then the last 2 months, you haven't said that at all. And I'm like, you're right. And I'm like, I haven't. And like, I've been recently being like, Darwin, you're so cute. And like, you're being so sweet and you're just the goodest dog, like all the time. And I'm so like, I'm just so excited that this is all happening. Like, as a result maybe of her diet, or it's just a culmination of like her age and all the training playing out and the diet happening. Because I think for us, it's like we didn't realize that reducing her calories actually means she's wanting more sleep. And I think being able to rest more and rest better is actually helping her regulate her own emotions better, so that when she goes outside, she's not as anxious, or when she's like, home and in her whiny state, she doesn't feel as pent up. So like she's been sleeping until like 10 sometimes, and she used to wake us up at like 7 a.m. So, and like, I'm not saying this was a direct like shift overnight, but it's just wild that it's starting to all kind of align, and she's become such a lazy dog, which is so weird to me. She still has her moments where she's psychotic, but overall, she just seems like a way chiller dog. And I don't think I would have ever figured this out unless it was, being at the vet and being like, oh my God, she's overweight. We need to change something. And I don't think a dog trainer like that I was working with would have told me like, maybe you should reduce your dog's diet or change their diet, and that might help their reactivity. So,
and I think like that is just such good information for us, as trainers to also consider of like, okay, so like this side of things may also influence situations, because I think it's so easy to like not in the same way that I don't see chews that are scary intakes because it's like she's just chewing like I don't know. So I think it's just good to keep in mind and also start seeing those trends, because I find that it's like at the end of the day, everything when it comes to behavior is so complex that we cannot just say like, like she's losing weight and now she's chill. And so like everything is because of that. But it is good to see that, okay, we changed these things and then we started seeing these things. And how does that kind of like continue to evolve? And I think like for you to start tracking, which she will track. If we know something is that Olivia will track it. So I am very interested to see how all of this continues to evolve and how we'll see a new Darwin, hopefully. At least less chunky and like also guys, if you have a fluffy dog, make sure to like go by their weight and all of that when they're wet. Because that's what I telling Olivia that when I noticed is that when you were sharing stories from like a year ago teaching Darwin how to swim. And then you will see her wet and she looked like skinny and thin and all of that. And then now this year, like she swims a lot, but she also comes out and like the fluff doesn't go away. Like it's not fluff anymore. So I feel like it's just like, it's so funny how to see like sometimes you do need to hear it from someone else to be like,
100%. I would share pictures of her fluffy, but you won't notice a difference because it'll just look the same, like before and after. But if I get her into a bath or if we go to the river sometime, I'll take a picture and then I'll share it and be like, look, she lost weight.
Once you start like going to the river again, that's going to be the thing. And then you have to put together kind of like the like 2024, 2025 and 2026 and see how we can.
But again, she's only lost like 2 pounds. So you're not going to notice a huge difference. But I think this was just the best way for us to go about it. And it's worked out really well. Again, not a vet, not a nutritionist. Don't take my advice. Go to a professional. But I think it's just a matter of like making subtle changes, small changes, being more mindful of things instead of just like going cold turkey or going really intense at something will actually yield you much better results and also a happier dog because they're not realizing it's this huge shift that they have to adjust to. And that it's just like small little changes here and there that they might not even notice.
Yeah, exactly. And like, I love that part of like, she's still getting her like sweet potato, but it's just like a smaller piece of
it's like 1/8 of the potato.
But she doesn't know that. And that's the thing. Like, and again, like guys, I cannot state this enough. Make your treats small, especially if you're training. I die every time I see like the massive pieces, and I'm always like, okay, let's stop treats.
We should make a graphic of like how small you can like cut up one little. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna make a beef liver treat. I'm gonna cut it up into like 10 pieces.
Honestly, because that's what I've been doing. I bought like this huge bag of sweet potatoes, and now I've been like chopping them into like smaller squares, and that's what I use for like some dogs. And then it's just like even like these sardines, I'm always like breaking them. Like you'll
break everything.
Break
just a rule. Just break everything. Don't take the piece as is from the bag.
No, I like you'll imagine me dying if you give your dog a huge treat. It'll be like, no, make it smaller.
Also, it'll save you money.
Exactly. It's just like in this economy, guys, we cannot be doing that thing.
I'm not willy-nilly just throwing out giant pieces of treats.
No. Make it smart. But anyways, I think like we'll have to leave it till here because of the timing. We've had a lot of troubleshooting issues, but I feel like this is a good rundown. And I think like the whole goal for us sharing this is number one, we all go through that. I went through that with my own dog. And, like with my resources were very different back then. And, like that's what I did. Just do the food, change meals, and that's it. And then don't give her bananas because that was extreme. And then in this case, like now I think like you are a perfect example of a more modern dog owner who has like all these treats. And then we're bombarded all the time with like this exciting new thing and everything is about food. So I think it's just like being mindful of that, like following trends, but being mindful of like, what your dog is eating and doing this exercise. Like I honestly, like I feel like that is going to be so fun for people. Like if you have a chunky dog and want to start just by being aware, like the first step is awareness, like just pull it out and just have an idea of how many calories your dog is ingesting, which I never did that with my dog and I wish I did. But it's just like, it's good exercise, I think. So it's just like, it's not like guys shaming on chunky dogs. It's not like they're very cute. But at the same time, we also have to look into the health and the longevity, which I think like that is like, that's something we all want. We all want our dogs to live as long as we can, make them live and possibly. So I think like, yeah, just these tiny changes and what you just said, I love that it's not about making drastic things. Sometimes just starting with awareness and playing with the things that you're already doing can create like a lot of like a ripple effect already. So it's not like breaking your bank or like hiring a nutritionist all the time. It's just like start by playing with what you have and then see what happens.
Good luck, guys. We hope to see your skinny dogs on Instagram.
And if they're chunky, we also want to see them. We can all have like a little club of like, how much weight are they losing this month? Yeah.
I love that.
Okay.
Well, thanks, guys. We'll see you on our next episode.
And I hope that you like our new solo setup because we'll get better at this. I promise. But we had to give it a try.
Bye, guys. You should say bye to your camera.
Bye, bye,
Bye.
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 Bye, bye, bye. We have so
Bye.
many cameras.